Welcome back to another episode of Everything Aviation Podcast. We have a fantastic guest for you today. This person has won the BMAA bursary. They're a YouTuber. They're in a Royal Navy University Naval Unit, trainee commercial helicopter pilot with Heli Centre, Microlight pilot, and ran a Lancaster flight sim as a Tiger Moth ground crew. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Tom McNicholas The Micropilot on YouTube. Tom, how are we?
I'm absolutely brilliant. Thanks for having me on.
No problems at all. It's not every day we get someone with that kind of CV on to come and have a chat with us. So it's great to have you.
No, thanks. It's not extremely extensive. After all, I'm only 23, but yeah, I've always tried to be as involved as I can with aviation since a very young age. So hopefully it's interesting enough for your listeners.
I'm sure it will be. I think anyone who listens to this already has an interest in aviation or is gaining one. So anything with aviation, they seem to lap up. So Tom, I'm gonna start off with the usual question that I ask everybody: and where did your interest in aviation begin or come from?
Well, I think it's sort of two stages, really. The first one is I have absolutely no idea. As I think some people, they just find that they're into it and they have no idea why. But also, I think something that really reinforced my interest was if anyone knows up north near Manchester area, there's the airfield, Barton Airfield, or known as City Airport and Heliport. And I used to go there just quite a lot with family. We'd watch all the airplanes and helicopters taking off and things like that. And then when I eventually got my own car at 16, 17, can't drive at 16. No, so when I got my own car, I was visiting quite a lot myself as well. And one of the best things, I don't know if anyone visited a few years ago, but the air ambulance used to be based right in front of the control tower. So there's like a perch on the first floor where all visitors can go and watch the aircraft. So Barton's actually really, really visitor friendly airfield. So we, used to stand on the tower quite a lot, and the helipad was unbelievably close to the tower. And then you could see that the little cabins on the side, you're quite literally just porter cabins. And then, you'd stand there for like an hour or two and you'd hear the little klaxon or the phone ringing going off. And then you see them all sprinting out to the aircraft. And it was just really exciting to watch that. And then I think from there onwards, I just, I wanted a bit of that excitement myself, as a career. So, I don't know. I was always interested in the emergency services, but then I don't know why. I just got drawn to the sort of pilot side of things. So it was mainly the air ambulances that got me heavily into aviation, and then from there onwards, when you start to look into it all, your interest just starts to go into other things as well.
You started flying on your you could say kind of building on your interest. You started flying on fixed wing with microlights.
Yeah, no, definitely. As you said already, I got the BMAA bursary, which was amazing. So the, especially back being sort of being in your mid-teens sort of thing, it's, as anyone knows, if you're trying to get into aviation, it's not cheap or easy. So, the closest thing and the cheapest thing at the time was to get into flying microlights. A brilliant flying school up at Barton Main Air. I started my first few lessons with, and at this point, I was in the process of applying to university and things like that. So I did my first few lessons on a EV97 Eurostar up at Main Air in Barton, and then went off to uni in Brighton. But in between the transition of going to university, I was incredibly lucky enough to apply to the BMAA bursary, and just basically prove, my massive interest in aviation and, just the passion that I have to do it. And, they see the sort of potential in young people, which is absolutely amazing. Because it makes it way more accessible than it would be otherwise. So we went and did sort of a selection day at Sywell. And then lucky enough, all of us who went on the selection day actually ended up getting awarded bursaries.
Oh wow!
And so, Yeah, and so I ended up being given, quite literally just gifted £2,000 from the BMAA
Wow.
to essentially kickstart my training into getting my NPPL microlight license.
Just for any listeners that aren't aware who the BMAA are, they're the British Microlight Aircraft Association. And what's great about actually having you on at the moment, Tom, talking about the BMAA bursary is that the BMAA bursary is open at the moment, which is fantastic. If you've got an interest in microlight aircraft and you want to go and train and become, you should definitely get over to their website now and apply for it. But Tom, what was your selection process like? What was it like when you decided, oh, I actually want to go and finish my license, I want to get a bursary? What was the selection process like for the bursary?
Yeah, so quite naturally, I think, you know, when they're looking to pay for people's training, they want to make sure they're giving it to the right people. So there's, I wouldn't necessarily call it extensive, but you know, there's the online application process that you have to go through. And I actually looked at it recently, and it was very similar to what it was when I applied. And they're essentially just asking why, you know, why do you want to do it? And you know, you just essentially prove, you know, that you're, you know, you're really into it, you're keen to learn, you know, aviation's your passion. And then out of the people who apply, they invite so many of you down. I can't remember how many was on mine. It was between 10 and 12 of us, I think. Out of however many applied. I wasn't sure how many applied. And we all got invited down to Sywell for a day, essentially. And this was actually quite a while ago now. So I was, I think, I don't know how old I was. I was between 17 and 18, I think. Some there were older, some were a little bit younger as well. So yeah, we went down, and I just remember that there was an individual interview. So there's about 3 or 4 people from the BMAA who interviewed you. And, you know, again, essentially just going over why, you know, you want the bursary and things like that. And then we all had to give a presentation on a aviation type topic. So I picked altimetry because for me, it was an excuse to learn something new and, you know, and then present it to the group of the people who were on the selection day and representatives from the BMAA. We had lunch, and then they took all of us flying for between, can't remember now, I think it was about half an hour to an hour. So we all went up and essentially proved to them that we're not scared of flying, essentially. And, you know, they just slightly assess your ability to learn, listen, you know, whilst you're in the air and things like that. And we came back down. They didn't tell us on the day, actually. You know, we all got a group picture. They didn't tell us, understandably, because if anyone wasn't selected, then, you know, it'd be unfair on them, you know, with everybody else around you who has passed, sort of thing. So we all went home, and then literally a couple of days later, we got an email saying whether we were successful or not and how much was going towards our bursary.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so it was absolutely amazing. And like I say, at that point, I was transitioning to moving down to university in Brighton. So I got in touch with the nearest microlight school, which was Deanland Aviation. Flight Sport Aviation at Deanland Airfield, and they were absolutely amazing about it. It's such a shame that he's not here anymore. But Richard, if you knew Richard Foster.
Yes, Richard, yes.
So he was incredible. So I was speaking to Richard and Shelley from Flight Sport. You know, I was speaking to them. They were really impressed that the BMAA had given me a bursary, and they were, you know, they were receiving me with open arms at the airfield, you know, sort of saying, you know, come along, we'll get you training, basically.
Brilliant. And
So,
I know for myself with Flight Sport Aviation and everything, it's a great microlight club. It's a great flying club. And I spend a lot of time myself there.
We're not even being forced to say this, by the way. They actually are really,
just to put it
really
out, there's no
school.
paid promotions in this.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there isn't, but yeah.
So how did you find then switching? Because the main training aircraft for microlights in Flight Sport Aviation is the Icarus C-42. How did you find after doing a couple of hours in the Eurostar switching to the C-42?
Well, I only actually had 4 hours on the Eurostar, and I think, like most people who start on microlights, they go for the Eurostar because it's the most normal, plain-looking microlight there is, essentially. Um, with the C42 looking a little bit more like a scaled-down Cessna, essentially. But no, I moved to flight sport. All they had at the time was C42, so naturally that was the only thing I could train on. But I think like anyone who's flown the C42, essentially just you don't learn to love it. You essentially love it when when you get flying it. It's a bit peculiar. I think what throws people off is the sort of the weird layout of the cockpit. You've got your throttle lever between your legs. The flaps are up on the ceiling, in between the two seats. And then you've got a central sort of side stick, which is kind of the opposite, because the Eurostar has your control in the middle, your control column in between your legs, and then the throttle in between the two seats. So, and it was oddly easy to learn how to fly it that way. It was just intuitive. I don't know. You'd think swapping around your hands and things like that would be a lot more harder, but it actually wasn't. And like you say yourself, you'll know, but anyone who's flown the C42 will just know how calm, stable, and sporty it is. It's weird to have a calm, stable, and sporty aircraft, but somehow it manages to do it. So
It's the only
yeah.
aircraft I've really ever flown that I think most schools use it because it, like you said, you've nailed it on the head. It's calm, stable, it's docile, it's forgiving. But at the same time, when you're up in the cruise and stuff, you can turn that thing into an F-16. It'll turn on the spot. It'll whatever you think about doing in your head, the C-42 will nearly react to. And I think that's what makes it such a good aircraft to learn in, is that it's got everything in one package.
Yeah, you'd be forgiven for thinking it's got some advanced computer controls behind the scenes, but no, it really hasn't. But like you say, it is quite sporty. But on the other hand, you can sit there, hands off the controls. You can, once you've set your throttle to keep you in a nice, straight and level cruise, then you can essentially hands off, and you can control your heading just by using your feet and your rudders. So it's a brilliant aircraft. And like I say, now I'm helicopter training. You do miss it because it's just a much more relaxed form of flying. It's more like about the sport and the fun of it rather than the really serious side of it.
Yeah, it's more like a, let's say, community you feel than a commercial feel, I would imagine.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm loving commercial training at the moment, but that whole grassroots element of going to the airfield, I mean, I remember on the summer days we'd turn up, Shelley would have the barbecue going, we'd all be having burgers and things like that, and then a few of us would just pop off in the plane for an hour and come back. It's absolutely brilliant.
That's what I loved even during the summer there recently. There was a flight sport barbecue on. Pop
Oh
down,
yeah,
have a
yeah.
burger, go for a spin, come back, have another burger, maybe go for another spin. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
It was amazing, yeah, and that was really good for getting everybody who you wouldn't normally see, because if you're just a normal hirer, you'd turn up in the week or at the weekend, do your hours flight and then go home. So all those social events were really good to just meet everybody else who was flying there, and I made some good friends, by meeting all the people at these social events that Flight Sport organised. So yeah, no, it's amazing, and I'm definitely going back at some point.
I'd like to see you back. It'd be a bit of crack.
Oh, definitely. We'll have to fly together at some point.
Oh, 100%. Definitely, definitely. So
Yeah.
you started training. At what point are you looking at getting into the YouTube side of things and videoing and documenting your travels, as to say?
So the whole YouTube thing sort of came about, I think, even before I got the BMAA bursary. I think quite naturally, as someone who's really keen into aviation, YouTube in the last few years has developed into what it is now. It's just incredible the amount of things on there. You could almost do a degree by just learning off videos from YouTube. But no, I don't know if it was just by my lack of finding content or whether there just wasn't any. But as a young keen teenager, I was always trying to find flying videos, and naturally there was a lot of stuff from the US, but not a lot from the UK. So You might have heard of him already, but someone I was really keen to watch was the Flying Reporter. So I used to love watching all his videos because he was mainly based in the UK. So especially when you're getting into flying and learning how to fly, watching someone's videos from the UK, you know, they're speaking to air traffic control and things like that, you know, and you just pick up things. Obviously, you don't learn it for proper training, but you know, when you can't fly or you've got big gaps between flying, all you do is watch videos on YouTube, you know, about flying. So for me, there was sort of not a lot going on the UK side of things. So I essentially just wanted to make my own channel and basically fill the gap that I perceived was there, you know. So initially, like anybody who starts on YouTube, my videos were absolutely dreadful. And I think out of principle, I don't recommend anyone to go watch them, but out of principle, I've left them on my channel. So
So you do
you can
know
go.
everyone's going to go straight to watch them now.
Oh, definitely. But then I urge them to go through the videos and watch how much better they've got since. But no, out of principle, I've just left them on there. So you can sort of go right back to the early days and watch. And the first ever one was an aerobatics flight. I was lucky enough to go on at Barton with a guy called Steve, and he was brilliant. He just took me up for an hour. It was my first ever aerobatics video and flight. So no, that was amazing. And feeling that weight of the G-forces on your face, you know, you're absolutely convinced that your face looks like it's melting. So it was a bit depressing looking back at the camera where it doesn't actually show how you were feeling when you were under those G-forces. But yeah, the only thing you see on camera is just the microphone disappearing down underneath my chin because of the G-forces. But no, that was brilliant. So I kind of went for early on, I kind of went for more of a sort of a fun, you know, a happy sort of fun, sort of sharing my fun experiences, you know, mainly during training in the early stages. But then the rest of it was just me having fun with my mates, going up flying at the weekends, sort of thing. And now I'm trying to tailor it more into just sort of information type videos. You know, obviously I'm not an instructor at the moment anyway, so I can't really teach people anything, and especially on YouTube. But I just like to explain what's going on because essentially I'm providing videos to my younger self who would have loved to seen this content. So, you know, and I'm hoping that, you know, other people enjoy it too. So, you know,
Does
and one of the
anybody?
things and one of the things I urge my viewers to let me know in the comments and things like that is just let me know what you want to know, because I'm making the videos for you. So I'm here coming up with all these video ideas, but I essentially want to know what people want to watch, basically. So let me know.
Brilliant, because Judge, going back to saying what think hope people enjoy it. Obviously, by your following, you've got quite a big following on it, so people seem to be quite involved in your videos, which is great to see. But when did you start actually getting a following? Because I know myself in doing it, I've had 2 successful videos, and the rest just don't seem to take off very much. So I do take my hat off to you for keeping that and keeping going.
It's really, really hard to put a finger on it, actually, because you're quite right. You make some videos, and another one of the most frustrating things about YouTube is that you'll make a video that you think is kind of crap. No one's going to watch it or anything. And then suddenly it gets thousands and thousands of views. And you're really mad because you didn't put as much effort into the production of it as you thought you could have. And then you go and put loads of effort into other videos that no one watches, you know, so it's really weird in that sense. So yeah, the first ever one, which I presume we'll talk about in a moment, is the near miss I had. And I think to this day, that's still the most viewed clip on my channel. But in terms of actually getting some sort of following, it's really hard to put your finger on because as anyone will know who gets into YouTube, the sort of the progression of subscribers, it's kind of logarithmic. You know, at the start, it's really, really hard to get subscribers. And it sort of corresponds with, you know, how good your production is. but that's only something you learn by producing more and more videos, you know.
Yeah.
But no, I'd say the first time I noticed it, it was kind of going anywhere, was probably over 100 subscribers, because that was kind of like, you know, the mark to hit at the time, because like I say, the videos were rubbish, but you know, for some reason people were subscribing. And one other thing that I thought was kind of odd was people actually like to watch the flight right from the start to the very end. You know, they genuinely will watch a 45 hour long video, which I thought was a bit odd, but people seem to like it. So I still shorten my videos down, because, you know, you kind of got to keep viewers, you know, attention, but still keep them long enough to, you know, to satisfy, because I've got to satisfy people who don't know anything about flying and people who possibly know a lot. So, you know, you've got to strike that middle ground, really.
Yeah, I don't know if you follow Flight Chops, a guy based
Oh,
in
definitely.
Canada.
Yeah. Getting into YouTube, he was, you know, that when you type in aviation flying, clearly he got into it early enough to sort of be the channel that everyone gravitates
He
towards.
found the niche, didn't he? He was well in there.
Definitely. Yeah, no, so, you know, whenever you typed in aviation or flying on YouTube, like, his channel was pretty much one of the first things that pops up. So quite naturally, I watched quite a few of his videos.
Because I know he does. I think he does a Patreon side to the flying videos. So you go onto his YouTube channel, he has all the content there that you can watch and stuff, but he also does a Patreon side where he will film. He flies a T6 Harvard Warbird at the moment, and I know he will do literally a video of him getting out of the car and just keeping the camera going throughout the whole thing until he's back in the car after the flight, and he offers that to patrons, I think.
Yeah. Well, again, you know, there's I don't know why, but people like it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it at all, but you know, one of the tricks to YouTube is, like I say, keeping your viewers' attention. So it'd be really easy, you know, during the boring parts of a flight for people just to switch off and put a different video on. So, you know, clearly they're the people who, you know, who your channel's all about, really. They're the people who are following you and really liking what you're doing, you know. So definitely, you know, you try and please them as much as you can.
100%, and I think we'll go back to this most viewed video on your channel, because it ties in with the training as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a rundown on the video?
Oh, it's well, without going into too much detail, it was essentially a near miss. And I'm definitely not going to badmouth anyone involved, because it was just, essentially, it was legal on both parts, on both aircraft. But we were flying near Beachy Head, you know, down near Brighton, and we were about just over 3,000 feet, I think. And I actually had my head inside the cockpit at this point, because it was actually training flight. My my instructor was teaching me sort of the effects of stalls and things like that. So we were doing quite a few stalls at the time. So my instructor told me to look at what he was doing. We weren't about to do a stall, but he was sort of, you know, describing what was going to happen and things like that. So my head was inside the cockpit at this point, and very easily his head could have been inside as well, you know, showing me what he was describing. But quite luckily at that moment, he was looking outside the window. And if you go and watch the video, you'll see it in, I'm not joking, in the space of about 2 seconds, he spots the jet heading straight towards us. He whips it to the right, you know, in the right direction in that circumstance. And, you know, collision avoidance with head-on collisions, you know, standard.
Everyone turns right.
The standard procedure is to turn right, but, you know, in some situations it might make sense to go left, you know, just you know, in that split second. But so
this jet wasn't kind of, if I've seen the video, it wasn't really head on with you. It was coming at you from an angle, wasn't it?
It was definitely from an angle. So if, you know, from the way we were seeing it, if the jet was doing a left turn whilst he was coming at us from that angle, it possibly would have made sense to go to the left. And, you know, kind of rules go out the window when you're trying to save your own life. So, you know, in that very split second, his precision reaction was absolutely incredible. So he just grabbed the stick, flung us to the right. We essentially did a 180 orbit, but as we turned to the right, I look at him thinking, this definitely isn't what you were trying to show me. Like wondering what on earth he's doing. And then as we bank to the right at quite a steep angle, I look up, and without a joke, you know, you could see the whole detail of the jet. And, you know, anyone who watches the video really doesn't do it justice at all.
Especially, was it filmed with a GoPro, because they're wide angle lenses as well, so everything seems further away.
Yeah. And the other thing as well is the GoPro's pointing forwards. So as we're banking away, the jet passes along the side of us, and I look out to the left. Yeah, I could genuinely see the faces of the pilots passing by us, and that genuinely isn't an exaggeration. They were that close. So they zoomed by us. I took probably a good 5 seconds to process what just happened, and then proceeded to crap myself. And then all the time, my instructors, you know, we sort of continued doing a 180, and then we see it flying off in the distance. And, you know, there's that initial element of what just happened. Then you have that sort of sense of, are we in the wrong place? You know, you always hear of these, you know, these.
Was that my fault kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. And you always hear these incidences where people accidentally strain to controlled airspace and all this sort of stuff. But we knew where we were. We definitely weren't in controlled airspace. You know, we weren't doing anything wrong. If anything, we were transponding 7,000 as well. And apparently, you know, after the investigation, the jet actually had TCAS on board.
Right, okay.
But from what their pilot said, they didn't get an indication, which, you know, could either be an excuse or maybe it just didn't give them an indication.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so we filed an air props in the air, landed back on the ground. We had one or two statements to fill in about what happened. Mine was quite minimal because at the time I knew barely anything about flying, but I just said what I seen essentially. And we even submitted the footage to the CAA. The Air Procs board. And yeah, after a while, they did an investigation, and then the report came out. It was really interesting to read, actually, because you don't realize all the stuff behind the scenes, actually. So they actually had, you know, screenshots of radar images and all sorts, of what happened. And when you're up there flying by yourself in the air, you don't think of any of this. You know, you just feel like you're out there by yourself. You know, you're on your own, essentially. But yeah, you don't realize all this is going on in the background. And kind of like the sort of the process of, you know, the Air Procs board isn't necessarily to blame someone or to criticize someone, but essentially it's just to bring out all the negative elements of what went on, you know, so you can essentially learn from what happened.
Yeah.
And and going on from there, I was scared to look in the cockpit for the next good 5 or 6 flights, you know. But I can tell you my scan is a lot better than most people at my amount of hours.
See, that's also one thing I love about flight sport is they're always keep your head outside, keep your head outside. And I think that's what one thing that microlighting in general is as well, as a lookout seem to be quite good. The one thing that I do find a bit strange about your video there is that you're at 3,000 feet outside controlled airspace. That's a very strange place to find a jet, isn't it?
Well, yeah, you know, I'm not going to judge what the pilot was doing himself, because again, he, you know, everything he was doing was technically legal. But then it makes you think, should private twin jets be allowed to fly IFR at 240 knots in an area where people are flying around for pleasure at 70 to 80 knots? You know, it's because as you see in the video, and as you learn in the HPL studies, you know, the time between spotting a aircraft on a collision course and doing something about it genuinely is seconds.
Yeah.
And not even that, you know, from it being a tiny dot in the sky to being, you know, full size in front of you is genuinely about 1 or 2 seconds. So, you know, how you go about how that's legal sort of raises a question. But it doesn't happen all the time. So, you know, again, it was just one of these rare circumstances.
Yeah, I think in the 8 years I've had a license, I've only had it happen the once as well, and that was
I
actually
think,
quite recently.
yeah, I think everyone gets a close call every now and then. But the thing that made this an airprox was that we definitely felt the need to take avoiding action, and you know, genuinely, in my opinion, we would have hit him if we didn't move. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and it ended up being, I think there's categories from A to F in terms of airprox, and clearly, if it's an airprox, you know, you're getting close enough anyway.
Mm.
And ours was deemed a category A airprox, so essentially as
Wow.
close as it got before we ended up a fireball. So,
Thank God that didn't happen. But isn't it
well, I
mad
know.
how like the one video like that ends up getting the most viewed on your channel then?
Yeah, no, it actually ended up in the BBC News as well,
Oh,
which
really?
was quite interesting.
I was at a Gasco meeting online actually a couple of weeks back, and it was featured there as well.
Oh, was it on the online one? Because
It was, yeah.
I remember like the year after that happened, I went to a Gasco meeting and they used that footage, but I didn't know they still using it to this day. But yeah, no, clearly they are.
Yeah, there you go. Something
So
you learn every day.
I'm glad that what happened to me is being used to help educate other people. So
Well, yeah, it certainly is, and I think the discussion was something about gliders and towing and stuff and keeping a good lookout, and
yeah,
that was one of the videos. And I remember actually sitting there and watching it and thinking to myself, that's Tom.
yeah. Yeah.
So, Tom, how long was it then after that you got your license?
Oh, it's really hard to say, actually. You know, despite having the bursary, you know, the money was sort of sat there in, you know, the way they do it is they give it to the flying school, not to you. So you can't run off and use it for something else, which completely makes sense.
Yeah.
So in theory, I could have, you know, done all my training within, you know, a month or two, you know, just doing it full time or whatever. But like I say, I was at university. So I kind of just sort of took it slow, but I was still really keen, you know. So probably at least once or twice a week, I was doing my training, and it's hard to say actually. I'd have to get my logbook out to see how long it took to get the license, but in total, you know, if eventually the money ended up running out, which of course it would. But then, you know, lucky enough, you know, you don't want to waste this opportunity that was given to you. So, you know, lucky enough, I ended up getting some help from parents to help, you know, for fun, carry on flying once every 2 weeks or so.
Brilliant.
You know, self-fly hiring the aircraft from Flight Sport. And that was really good because, you know, to do that at the weekends was amazing, especially when you're working really hard, you know, during the week at university. So yeah, no, I ended up doing just around 95 hours, I think, in Microlights in total. Absolutely loved it. And actually only just recently on helicopters, I've only just gone over that. So I'm on 97 at the moment on helicopters. Wow. And but what's really weird about it, because I'm full-time training at the moment, it's going really quick with helicopters. And because of COVID and things like that, we're not allowed to take passengers up. So it feels like I've done way more flying on Microlights than I ever have on helicopters.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was helped by the fact, you know, when you're taking mates up, you're having fun, you get, you know, flying to an airfield, having lunch and then flying back and things like that, you know. But I think as we all are hoping at the moment, you know, once COVID clears off, you know, we can start having some fun. So
100%. I'm itching to get back. I miss air shows, and it makes me laugh a bit actually, that the fact that all the air shows are getting cancelled, but you might be able to eat with a load of people in a restaurant, but you can't stand in an open air field watching airplanes. But yeah, I do hope it gets back to normal soon. And like you said, we'll get flying again, and we'll.
I hate to criticize how it gets run, because you just use so much energy complaining 100%. About it all. So.
100%. But you know that we're in aviation. That's what we do best. We complain. You know, it's just we complain and we fly.
Complain. It's like the Instagram post I put up the other day. You know, it's like, why is the most stunning weather like the most dangerous, you know? You just always find you know, a reason to complain about something, you know, Because no, I was at the airfield not that long ago to self-fly hire the helicopter, and the weather was stunning, but loads of low-level ground fog and things like that. But it looked amazing, but it was completely dangerous to take off. So feet stayed firmly on the ground that day. So.
It still made a good picture on the ground from what I've seen when you put it up.
Oh, really good, yeah. But that's the most I got out of that day.
It's closer to an aircraft than I've been in 2 months, though, so it's all right. You're getting somewhere.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So, Tom, you're a fixed wing pilot first, and then you were looking at. I think you joined a Royal Navy University unit first. Was there a point where you were looking at maybe joining the Fleet Air Arm?
Well, actually, the whole reason I did it, as I was saying earlier, the thing that got me into aviation primarily was watching air ambulances do their thing and just really wanting to be a part of that excitement and, helping people and things like that. So, I again, being that young, keen teenager, I spoke to as many people as I could. So I ended up getting tours of the air ambulance and even did work experience at Barton for a week. And, you eventually find out that at least back then, probably about 5 years ago or something, you speak to them and you realize that a lot of them are ex-military. And, from there onwards, I joined the Air Cadets like most people, young people who are into flying do. Which was amazing. Did a bit of flying with Air Cadets, and you just get involved, go shooting, all that sort of stuff, and it's really fun. And then you sort of, well, I don't know about other people, but I definitely sort of developed a fondness of the military and the idea of being a pilot in the military. So then my sort of main focus shifted towards the military. And then, so, that's all I was ever keen about doing from there onwards. So when I went to university, I sort of missed being a part of some sort of military unit. And yes, it was only cadets, but whilst I was at university, you look at joining different societies, clubs, sports and things like that, and I joined a few of them and had a lot of fun, but I was just I was still missing something.
Yeah.
So I knew straight away I wanted to sign up for a UAS, a University Air Squadron, because you essentially go flying for free and it's with the RAF. What's better than that, whilst you're studying? So, and you get paid for it as well. But so I straight away, I think one of the first things I did at uni was sign up for the nearest one. But it was completely impractical because the nearest one to Brighton was Boscombe Down, which was a 2-hour car or train drive away. And, given with what goes on, you're not just flying and things like that. There's a lot of socials, there's a lot of lectures and things like that going on. So doing that, all the time would have been exhausting. It would have cost a lot. And it just really wasn't, as much as I'd have loved to do it, it wasn't worth it, especially when there's a bit of focus to be done on studying as well.
Yeah.
Because you forget that's the whole reason why you're at university. So I naturally looked at, anything similar, and I realized that actually up the road, genuinely like 5 minutes from my uni house, was the URNU, so the University Royal Naval Unit. And so I thought, well, why not? It's essentially the same as the UAS. It's just instead of going flying, you go on ships instead. So, and I thought, if I'm going to join the RAF or something, having experience with the Navy, and especially as an officer cadet, it's essentially the same thing. And, the RAF, Navy and Army work together quite a lot anyway. So, any experience is good experience. So I joined the URNU and it was genuinely amazing. So I spent nearly 3 years with them and we did loads and loads of amazing things. I spent nearly a week at RNAS Yeovilton.
Oh, wow.
Where we got to play on the, well, I say play, but yeah, we got an experience on the full motion Wildcat simulators.
Wow.
We got to tour all the hangars. We looked at Merlins, Wildcats, and all sorts. Fired up the ground power units on the Wildcats and playing with their infrared cameras and all sorts was absolutely amazing. And then visiting the armory, the fire station, the length they went to for us was incredible. They rolled out the fire engines and we were genuinely blowing foam all over the taxiway, just for fun. So that was incredible. So, you just get to do loads of really, really cool things that you just don't as a normal uni student. And it's not just doing cool things. It genuinely is, adding something extra to your CV whilst you're at university. Like what employer isn't going to love that, And that's the whole point of them, actually. So the RAF, UAS and the OTC, the Officer Training Corps for the Army, they're a little bit more focused on recruitment. So their entry requirements and things like that are a little bit more stricter than the UNU. But the UNU, I think quite rightly, has by the way, all of them don't require you to, to join up afterwards. There's no strings attached to it at all. But they're a bit more focused on recruitment. But the Royal Navy, so the UNU, was, I think quite rightly, a little bit more different. Their main message was sort of to expand awareness about who the Royal Navy are and what they do to all these people who join UNU. And, quite naturally, probably a good, I can't say the exact number, but 3/4 to 2/3 of us don't actually join up. But, they sort of spread the message of, actually what the Royal Navy does for the UK. You forget that 80 to 90% of our trade comes by sea. Just things like, you just learn things like that, and you really appreciate what they do, because not a lot of people know about the Navy or what they do, actually, because they're all focused about being at sea, and you don't see any of that going on. You see a lot about the RAF and the Army and things like that. But it's incredible. We were incredibly lucky enough to get tours of the new aircraft carrier, HMS Queen Elizabeth. Which again, what uni student gets to do things like that. We've toured Type 23 frigates, and we've done loads of stuff. We've done loads of charity stuff as well, which was incredible. So I think you might know yourself, but located close by to Brighton was the Blind Vets.
Yeah.
So we went to their building quite often, did a few charity events for them. And essentially, we did a lot of things called Royal Navy in the public eye. So we just essentially represented the Navy.
Brilliant.
But genuinely had amazing fun whilst doing it. And we got to go to Dartmouth twice, and just spending time at these establishments, that the royal family have, been to and trained at, and this building where every single Royal Navy officer, in the past has been trained at, it's just incredible. So. Yeah, and you get paid to do it as well, and it's all in your spare time. So we go to sea as well. So there's summer deployments. So the Royal Navy actually has a fleet of, I might be wrong, but it's about 14 P2000s. So they're sort of offshore. They're just coastal patrol craft. They're quite small, but they're still called warships, even though they're unarmed. But yeah, you go out to sea on them. You do summer deployments, things like that. You do sea weekends as well. So, you can do those quite often. And you do loads of cool stuff. And unfortunately, I never did this myself. But my girlfriend, it's where I met my girlfriend from as well. But she did something really cool that they normally do annually, but obviously it's been called off this year, called Bolt Ops. So they go up. So they go up to the Baltics with the Royal Navy and a load of NATO allies, and because these were quite small ships, we'd essentially go up and play the bad guy for all the huge warships.
Love it.
So they'd be driving the boats at full speed towards full size destroyers. And, they'd be going about their procedures, essentially, obviously not doing it for real, but blowing you out the water and things like that. So
it's just like a massive war game, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think as a joke as well, at one point, one of them, I've seen the picture, one of them gets out the tube for a Hoover and pretends it's an RPG and just things like that. It's absolutely incredible. But no, I can't recommend it enough to anyone who's going to university. So even if it's the Army, RAF, or the is it getting paid to do loads of this cool stuff? And yes, so sorry I blabbered on a bit, but going back
by
to
all means, you work away. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, so going back to your original question, originally I was all about the RAF, but after having loads of exposure to what the Navy are all about, I quite naturally developed more of a bias towards the Fleet Air Arm at that point. And my argument was that if you get accepted into the Fleet Air Arm, you're not going to be flying anything boring at all, because all they've got are Merlins, Wildcats, Hawks, and F-35s. The RAF. To be honest, I can't say this at all because I'd be happy flying anything they fly. But the RAF have such a bigger fleet of aircraft. You could want to be a fast jet pilot, but then you'd get put on multi-engine transport or something. But my argument was that my primary preference was rotary anyway. So if you were to join up for the Fleet Air Arm and be put on rotary, that'd be amazing. But then if they shift you towards fast jet, who's going to complain about that?
Exactly. So, you were in a win-win situation, really.
Exactly. No, but I ended up leaving university, and essentially flying training became an option to me. Really fortunate. And just after speaking to a lot of people, I really don't want to badmouth the military at all, but the whole process of becoming a pilot is not only stressful. There's a lot of work to do, and quite rightly, the people who get selected, genuinely deserve it. But there's a ton of work to be done, and despite being astronaut level, candidate, there's just no guarantee that they'll accept you. It's just the amount of people who apply, the amount of people who are incredibly more qualified than you to do the job, and then not only having been accepted, but then going from start to finish without being chopped on your flight training. There's no guarantees. And so the way I seen it was, especially because it became a possibility for me, as much as I'll forever regret it, I went the civilian route, just because that as long as you don't fail your exams, you're definitely going to become a helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just a lot more of a surefire way of going about a career, really. But like I say, I'll always miss that military touch. So already, even though I'm full-time training, I've become a civilian instructor at the local air cadet squadron and things like that.
Myself.
Yeah, so I'll always want to stay in touch with it all. But I think quite naturally the way that the industry's shifting, because it used to forever be that that the best people were all ex-military, and they'd always take ex-military pilots. But just as all the aircraft are becoming a lot more developed, and they're more expensive, essentially. I think an F-35 is over £100 million and things like that. So they're quite naturally the RAF are taking on fewer pilots because they don't need as many. So there's fewer retiring, and they're trying to keep hold of their pilots as well, because when they spend so much money on training them, it'd be silly to see them go after a few years. So, and that, I think I can't say how it works because I don't know enough about it, but essentially there's less ex-military coming out into the civilian world than there was a few years ago. So quite naturally, like air ambulances, police, search and rescue, they're just taking on experienced civilian pilots. And I was really blown away because I was, again, fortunate enough to go and tour the London Air Ambulance base on top of the Royal London Hospital in London.
Wow.
And having spoken to all of the pilots who were on shift that day anyway, which was incredible. They told us, I was really surprised that all of the pilots they have, there isn't a single one who's ex-military.
Wow,
and you'd think for London Air Ambulance, especially it being London, with the airspace they've got, you know, the really confined areas that they land in and things like that, that they'd have the most experienced pilots that they can, and they do, but they're all civilian, they're not ex-military.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, it's that was really interesting to see. So again, that softened the pain of not having applied for the military myself. But no, so that seems to be the way it's going, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is way into the future, but they might completely do away with manned aircraft systems anyway. Because again, I'm not qualified to speak about it really, but the human is the limiting factor when engineering gets so developed, and these systems can pull way more than 9G, but the pilot inside can't do any more than that, so especially for high-end fighting anyway, I think they'll completely do away with pilots anyway.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I know recently I read it somewhere that they've just flight tested a drone version of a Jet Ranger, I think it is, a Bell 206.
Yeah.
And it looks really strange, but it's quite cool watching the video of it, knowing that there's someone sat like me and you at a computer as if they're playing Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Well, I can say on that ground that I'm fully qualified for that job anyway. Honestly, if I had the hours in real life that I have on Flight Simulator, I'd be the most qualified pilot in the world. So.
I know that feeling. I'd be a Red Bull pilot. I'd be an aerobatic pilot. I'd be test pilot.
Be a celebrity, yeah. But then again, the amount of crashes I've had on Flight Simulator would have made me the most.
Yeah, lucky enough, touch wood. I've never had any in real life. It's all been on the flight sim.
Oh yeah. But actually, going off that, obviously I moved to start rotary training. I really can't say that, that I can't officially say that it's a huge benefit, really. But when I got onto, obviously playing flight sim for so long, eventually flying planes around actually kind of bored me. So I ended up buying a joystick and rudder pedals and stuff to plug into the computer, and essentially just love flying helicopters around, landing in really, just taking a mick, basically landing in the grounds of the Buckingham Palace and things like that, But I really loved the motion of it, just, flying sideways and transitioning into different forms of flight and, really precisely controlling it. I really loved the feel for it. So when I started helicopter training, I actually had a really, really good sense, just a good sense of how it worked. Obviously, I didn't know how it actually felt in real life or anything like that, but I knew that, if I was to push forward on the cyclone, it would tilt forward and start flying forward. And I knew that, from experience on the simulator, I'd need a bit more power to keep it level and just things like that. So I don't want to overestimate my own abilities at all, because, I can fall short in other areas completely. But when it came to learning to hover it, I got it within the first 2 hours, completely all three controls by myself. And, it usually takes someone with no experience, a good few more hours to nail it. Yeah. So I can definitely say that flight sim definitely helped, especially on the knowledge side of it. But obviously, when it comes to proper formal training, nothing beats the real thing. So.
But that's it. I'm finding myself now during lockdown. I haven't flown since December, and I'm finding myself, I've got a C-42 on flight sim, and I find myself sitting down with the checklist and actually replicating all the checks. But like you said, again,
yeah. Again, there's a brilliant video that John, the flying reporter, did again during lockdown. But he got his own version of his plane on X-Plane. I forgot what it's called now. I think it's VATSIM.
I've heard of VATSIM.
Yeah, where people can essentially just hook up online and fly together virtually with people simulating proper air traffic control and things like that. So he's shown a video of him essentially flying the plane IFR like he would in real life, but I just found it really interesting, just almost how flawless they made it, because anyone who's flown simulator and real life will know just how frustrating simulators are, because you can't look to the left and see the airfield whilst you're doing a circuit, or do you know what I mean? You can't, and I don't know, to control a certain element that you normally have a lever to do really simply, you've got to do a few keystrokes, and
it's like 6 presses of the F button.
yeah. My favorite one, I think, again, it's been a while now, but I think you had to hit like Shift F and then like tap one really quick but really precisely, and that would open the door. So yeah. But if you took a second too long or too short, it wouldn't work, and just really weird things like that. But I don't know, that was part of the fun of flying flight sim, wasn't it?
Well, the one thing I found with flight sim as well is going back to, like, it doesn't substitute training. So at Deanland, I don't know if you know yourself now, we've got a new kind of dog leg on kind of 2-4. So you take off, there's boards you have to keep on your left hand side, so you do a kind of a kick 10 degrees and climb out. But coming in,
I remember that.
Coming in, we now have to follow that this new thing. So it's kind of like a dog leg. So we're about 100 to 150 feet. You have to do a slight little kink of a left turn to line up with the right fully. I've practiced this so many times on flight sim, but because there's no detail, I could have been teaching myself something completely different.
Yeah, no, of course. No, it'll never replace the real thing. But for someone who can't afford to go flying, even people who go flying, you can never afford to go flying as much as you want to. No. I'd be up in the air more than I am on the ground if that was possible. But that's what flight sim's for, isn't it? It's just giving you that little kick that you need at the weekend before you start.
It doesn't fully scratch the itch, but it takes away most of the pain.
Oh no, but it's fun in its own right, though, isn't it? You can do things that you can never do in real life. Like one of the things I, used to do was set sort of like 140 knot headwind and then hover a 737 off the runway. And I was genuinely blown away the day when I did a full circuit with 140 knot wind. So we took forever to go upwind. And turning crosswind, you sort of get blown downwind at the same time. So you make it one motion, and then you can line up on final and take forever to come in above the runway, adjust the throttle, and essentially land vertically on the runway in a 737. Like you can only do that
on the numbers.
Yeah, you can only do that in a sim.
I love it. I remember setting it one time actually to something ridiculous crosswind, and then trying to take off on it, and literally I got about 4 seconds into the takeoff roll before I was upside down, rolling like a tumbleweed towards the tower and the terminal. I was like, oh no, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah. No, I do remember the first day I actually flew my own flight sim, and it was a disaster. But I'll always remember it, though.
Do you guys get any sims in the heli training? Like, have you guys got any, like you described with the Wildcat, any full-on simulators before you're into the real thing?
So, no, but yes. So, when you're going through your commercial training, your private pilot's license and things like that, it's all done on the real thing. You learn to hover, all of that sort of stuff. But having said that, Heli Centre have got, I think they're actually ex-RAF squirrel simulators.
Oh wow!
But like I say, it doesn't replace the real thing. But they're using them now. They've got them fully certified for IFR training.
Oh wow!
So no, we don't have simulators for helicopter training, but Heli Centre have just started doing their first ever few IR courses, and they've got the simulators to go along with that course, and they've just bought a beautiful 109 that now takes up a lot of space in the hangar, but you can't blame it at all. It looks fantastic. There's a few pictures on my Instagram of that, but yeah, no, it's really nice. But yeah, so they've started IR training, so that's the only time you'll possibly see simulators at this level of flying, because naturally when you go off to say a company like Bristow or something, you sort of get the gist of flying, like something as big as the S92 in the simulators. You learn all the emergencies on it, And, again, that cuts down the cost of training, but then you then go do training on the proper thing. But the whole point of the sim is to reduce the amount of time you spend in the actual thing just to save money. But that's a big commercial type thing. But when we're training PPL to CPL sort of level, there's no simulators involved.
What's your plan now, Tom? Because you've got the PPLH, which is the helicopter license. You're obviously going on to do the commercial side of it. What's your plans?
So like I say, the dream's air ambulance. It will forever be air ambulance. I'll never turn down a job like the police or search and rescue or anything like that. But the goal is sort of air ambulance. But if I go off and do something else, I'm not too fussed. The course, I'll actually dip into why I'm doing the helicopter training anyway.
I was quite interested of why, because you've got your foot in the door with fixed wing, having a Microlight license under your belt. So what made you, I know you've had a fascination with rotary, but what made you spin off from, I'm going to start from scratch for a rotary license?
A spin-off, pun intended, yeah.
Hey.
So actually, like I say, it became possible to do commercial training. So I think quite naturally, the first place I went to was the Heathrow Careers Conference, which again, it all sort of fell into place because it became possible to commercially train. And then quite literally, only a few weeks after, the Heathrow Careers Conference was on. So we got tickets to go to that, and I went there with a completely open mind. I've always been into aviation and know a lot about it, but when it actually comes to going about starting training, I was at square one essentially.
Yeah.
So I went to the Heathrow Careers Conference and went round a lot of flying schools. So you had all the huge ones there like CAE, L3, all the big ones were there. I was still really interested to hear from all the smaller ones as well. But out of the people who were there, obviously the military were there as well, but we won't talk about that. Out of everyone who was there was only 2 helicopter schools there. And one of them was sort of a branch off of a fixed wing school. I don't remember the name of it or anything, but it was sort of a branch off a fixed wing school. So their helicopter operation was actually really small.
Yeah.
But I think their focus at the center as well was a bit more on their fixed wing side of flying as well. But then I came across Heli Center, and I actually, this was really, really weird because I have flown at Heli Center before, and this was again Sam Abbott, who, well, I was speaking to you before we did this recording, who was a friend that I knew from Deanland. He did his rotary training at Heli Center, and he took me up as his first passenger. And
Brilliant.
Again, you can see this on my YouTube channel. We went up on quite a hazy day, flew around for a bit, and then that was that. But it was a really good flight. And again, I had barely any time on helicopters at all. So it did that. That made for a great video. Recommend people to watch it. But then went back down to Brighton and continued at uni and things like that. Flying microlights. Never did I have any idea that I'd be training there, a year or 2 after.
Yeah.
But so I came across Heli Center's stall at the careers conference, and I think, it's their job to, but quite naturally they sold the course to me. But it completely made sense though. And the way they worded it was, and again, it's not just them pushing the sale. I completely agreed with it. And again, I already had quite a big bias towards rotary anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think it was from all that time playing flight sim that, just, the way I seen it was, you do a lot more different things on a day-to-day basis in rotary than you would in fixed wing.
Yeah.
So the way it was sort of put to me was, for the exact same cost that it takes to get your frozen ATPL with one of the big schools, for this, for the same amount, you get a commercial helicopter license, 2 type ratings, and a guaranteed job with HeliCentre afterwards as an
Oh
instructor.
wow, that's brilliant. See,
So no, sorry, I said that wrong. So commercial license, 2 type ratings, a flight instructor course, and a guaranteed job with HeliCentre.
wow.
And then when I compared it to, no specific school, this is generally sort of how fixed wing works anyway. But then when I compared that to commercial training with a fixed wing school, having a frozen ATPL and no type ratings, no type rating on a big airliner, which essentially what your goal is anyway, So then after spending that amount of money and then having to fork out an extra 60 to 70, I don't know what the cost is, but it's quite a lot. I think it's between 30 to 60K on just getting a type rating on something like an A320 or a 737. I'd already have a job and 2 type ratings from HeliCentre.
Yeah.
So, you'd have the type rating on the Cabri G2, which you do most of your training on, a small 2-seater aircraft, which doesn't have really any commercial benefit to it because, if you did, you'd only be flying 1 passenger. So, but, you do all your training on that, you'd get your commercial license. Included in the cost of my course was an R44 type rated, which has a lot of commercial, possibility to it. And HeliCentre do actually use it a lot commercially for pipeline operations and things like that. So you get your commercial license and then straight onto a flight instructor's course. And then after that, a guaranteed job with them as a flight instructor. And then hopefully being able to instruct on both a Cabri and an R44. So, that's what cemented it for me, because one of the biggest struggles I know, because I've got quite a few friends who are doing fixed wing training, is one of the biggest struggles is once you've got your frozen ATPL, you've spent all that money and possibly, you have to start paying that money back. You don't have a job, you don't have a type rating, and it just what it was. I don't want to criticize that way of doing things because obviously that's how it's done. That's people do it that way, and it works for them. But for me, what cemented it was the guaranteed job at the end. And I think, as anyone knows, like one of the your worth as a pilot is essentially the amount of hours you've got, your experience. So, like I say, not only having a guaranteed job, but a guaranteed job as an instructor where you could be flying max up to about, I think, between 600 and 800 hours a year.
Yeah.
Spending a few years as an instructor could, your employability just shoots up in the space of a very short space of time. The only downside is that eventually, if you want some of the top jobs, you need an instrument rating, which unfortunately in the rotary world means, in the UK, we sort of only do it on twin engine helicopters.
Okay.
For redundancy and things like that. I think in the US it works a bit differently. You can do it on single engines. But the thing that drives the cost of that is not necessarily the instrument rating itself, because a lot of that's theory and time in the air, practicing instrument approaches and things like that. But the big cost of it is needing to get a type rating on a big twin engine helicopter like a 109 or something like that.
Yeah.
To do your IR training. So that's the only sort of downside to it in the future, but eventually you can save up and you can afford that in the future. And the benefit of that is then doing any job that requires an IR. So, like air ambulances, flying offshore oil and gas and things like that. Like I say, you can get into the career, into the industry, purely just VFR as a commercial pilot and instructor. So that's why I sort of went rotary, and it wasn't necessarily going rotary. It's just what the course offered. But in my head, it was also a benefit that it's helicopters.
Well, there's that, and I didn't know any of this until you started talking to me about what HeliCentre are offering. And
Yeah.
even that, I've always wanted to fly helis. I've been fortunate enough to have a spin in quite a few helis, and
Yeah.
it's just what you can do with them that fascinates me. And before, it's on my bucket list. Before I die, I'm going to have a heli license, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just one of those things, you know. And
Yeah.
but from what you've told me now, I've looked at the airline route, and I've gone
Mm.
off the airline route completely in the last kind of 5 years, just because of like you said, it's loads of money. You're getting loads of you're coming out with loads of debt and nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And you're getting there is 2 type ratings in the back pocket and an instructor's rating and a commercial license for the same price.
For the same price, but also again, the thing that baffled me was that it's on helicopters. You know, when you think of it is how it works, but you know, naturally getting your PPL on a helicopter is almost double the cost of getting your aeroplane PPL. But like I say, for some reason, you know, when you're going into this commercial level sort of training, it actually works out kind of. It might be just the courses that Heli Centre offer that it works out like this. Um, I don't, you know, Heli Centre is the only helicopter school I've known. So going to a different school, I don't know how they work things. But, you know, on the PPL level side of things, yeah, it's, helicopters are way more expensive. And, you know, to fly them and self-fly hire them for fun is like double the cost of a fixed wing, you know, completely uneconomical, you know, for the benefit of just flying something with spinny wings. But, you know, at the commercial level, like I say, for the money between, you know, the comparison between the two, it works out better. And it's helicopters, which you perceive
Yeah.
to be way more expensive anyway. So it almost doesn't add up. But when you look at it in its component parts, it really does. And it's really well worth it if it's, you know, an option. So
Because I always did wonder why so many people went for commercial fixed wing licenses rather than commercial heli licenses. Because when you talk to your mates or anything like that, and I know myself, working in the airline industry at the moment, you hear lots of people being like, "Oh, you know, I flew this, that, and I'm a captain on this," and but no one has ever said, "Oh yeah, I'm a captain for Bristow," or "I'm a captain for the air ambulance." No one
well,
said.
I think that they do. It's just the proportion of commercial airline to commercial heli pilots is huge. I think I got told by our head of training at Heli Centre recently that I think of all those in the industry, just within the UK, is about. I'm talking commercial pilots, not complete, you know, rotary. Just commercial rotary pilots is about 1,500.
Oh wow,
And
okay.
yeah, and what was really interesting, and again, this, you know, we can move on to the fixed-wing side in a second, but what's really interesting as well is that a big proportion of those, I can't remember the numbers exactly, but a good 400 or odd are, I think, over 50. So
Okay.
within the next 10 years, a huge amount of those are going to be retiring.
Yeah.
And again, we're looking at the commercial world now. Again, no one can ever forecast this because COVID's just thrown a massive curveball into it. Because, you know, a lot of places have really unfortunately had to lay off loads of pilots and cabin crew and things like that. But putting COVID aside for a second, you know, they say, and I think they have for years now, but they say that, you know, that the demand for airline pilots is going up. And some people say a huge amount, some people say a little amount, but in general, they say that it's going up. But you look at the amount of people going through training, you know, it's like eventually the way they work the system might have to be changed, or they're going to have to start bringing out bursaries or something. Because
Yeah.
how they fill the gap, I have no idea. Now, I guess COVID's put a hold on all of that because now there's a lot of pilots out there, you know, who could fill the gap because they, you know, they're unfortunately out of a job. So, you know, I presume that rate of pilot demand has probably been reduced now,
Yeah.
quite a lot. But how it works for the rotary world, I have no idea because even during COVID, a lot of rotary operations have still continued. Like, you know, the police still need to operate, air ambulance, search and rescue, you know, offshore oil and gas still operates because we still need to fuel our cars. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's how that's been effective, I don't think we'll know for a while yet. But like I say, quite a huge proportion of rotary pilots are going to retire in the next few years. So apparently, to get rotary training anytime between now and the next about 10 years or so is a really good time to start training. So,
Brilliant.
and that's towards commercial license, not just PPL. So.
I was going to say, because I think I was chatting to my dad recently about this, that I always wanted to be a helicopter pilot. He said, by all means, go and do it. But he said, if you're going to do it PPL wise, he said, getting it's going to be the cheap part. He said, it's going to be maintaining it afterwards is going to be the hard part.
Yes. And that's why I find myself incredibly fortunate to be doing it this way round, because, you know, I think to become a fixed wing pilot and fly rotary for fun is a little harder than it is to fly rotary commercially and then fly something as affordable as Microlights, you know, for fun is, you know, probably a more sustainable way round of doing it. But yeah, like I say, I'm always going to come back to Microlights when it becomes a possibility. Like, definitely, like once you've had a taste for it, you definitely want to do it again.
It's addictive, isn't it? It's like with Microlights, it's just like you said, it's the most affordable way to fly at the moment, for anyone looking at getting into it, and it's just so addictive. You get up, like you said, you go to the Isle of Wight, you have a barbecue with your mates, you have a formation flight home.
Yeah,
you can just hop in whenever just to go, and it's affordable, and you just have fun doing it.
or the freedom you have to do it. And again, this I think this is what might have increased my following a bit on YouTube as well, was the sort of freedom you have to do what you want. And I think David from the airfield and Shelley, they were brilliant, because, you know, as long as I wasn't doing anything, you know, outside of normal procedure, they were pretty much happy for me to do whatever I wanted. So, you know, we did a few silly things. I made like a spoof documentary about the RAF using microlights instead of fighter jets.
I have a bone to pick with you about that, actually.
Okay, well, yeah. So what we did was me and my mates from the naval unit pretending to be RAF. You know, we weren't at all impersonating the RAF. We were just pretending, and we pretended to scramble a microlight as a part of the quick reaction alert because of budget cuts to the MOD. So we did that. I went up and intercepted and flew in formation with, you know, my mate. We'd all fully pre-flight planned this and everything, but we did that sort of to commemorate the RAF centenary, and it was a proper good laugh. Like, it was really fun to do. And then we just did other stuff. Like, one of the other things that I did that I didn't really realize the significance of when I did it was going and landing at Dunsfold, like landing on the Top Gear runway.
I did watch that. That was really cool.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The only thing I regret about it was the amount of sunlight that day completely like whitewashed some of the outside looking cameras. And because of this stuff that goes on there, they weren't too keen for us to film on the ground as well. So the amount of the airfield that you actually see isn't great in the video, but just on final approach, looking at the racetrack, looking at the huge, you know, that iconic 747 in the background, and landing on the same Top Gear runway that they filmed so many world famous episodes on, you know, was just, again, it hits you after you've done it. Like, it was that I'd like to go back again before it, you know, I think they change it or rip it apart or whatever. So.
Well, if you're up for that, give me a shout. I'd definitely be up for doing it as well. And
I'm always up for it. I'll do it now if it's possible.
How do you go about getting permission to do that? Like, because I always thought, because it's a closed airfield, you wouldn't get near it.
What, Dunsfold?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know. I called them, said, can I have PPR? I'm just coming to visit. I think I was quite honest. I was just like, I want to land on the Top Gear runway. And whenever they're not filming, it is an operational airfield.
Okay.
You know, because when I flew in there was someone doing some circuits there and stuff. So it's not disused at all. But that's saying what it was back then. I have no idea what it's like now. But
yeah. Might be worth a phone call once we can fly again.
Well, definitely. Yeah, so I don't know how busy it is. Like I say, it's still operational. They had a guy in the tower. It was only air ground, but they still had someone in the tower and stuff. So,
yeah.
You know, as far as I'm aware, you can visit, but again, I don't know what it's like in terms of PPR, because this was quite a while ago now. I just called them up and they said, yeah, you can come in. So
Brilliant.
yeah, that was
So
brilliant.
going back to that RAF video, so I watched that and I was like, yeah, that's a really cool one. Until I found the TikTok version of it, of the Irish Air Corps scrambling their airplanes.
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't watch that. Right, the way I'm going to justify this is that it's okay because I'm a quarter Irish myself. Half of my family is Irish, but no, it was genuinely just banter. And the amount of views that got was quite funny, actually. And then if you go into the comments, the amount of people having little tiffs in the comment section about, like, I don't know, just between the banter between the Irish and the British in that video is quite good.
I have to say, I did make
For
me
anyone
chuckle.
for anyone who hasn't seen it, the joke was that the Irish scramble their aircraft, but it's only a little thing, it's like Microlight or something. Because I think what inspired me to make that, obviously the video was already filmed because it was a YouTube video. I just put a bit of Irish music and a bit of text overlay to put it on TikTok. But the thing that actually inspired me to make that was I watched a really funny video. I think it was Brian Cox.
Okay.
I think it was Brian Cox, and he said he was doing something with the RAF. And it might have been in the Top Gear interview, I think, but I can never find it. But I just remember how funny it was when he said it. He said he was flying with the RAF, and what they were doing was they were chasing the sun. So the sun was setting.
Yes, I watched
you
this.
might have. Yes, you might have seen
go
it.
in a typhoon or something, and they let it set, and then faster than the speed of sound.
Yeah, so what they did was they let the sun set off in the west, and they were flying this. I think they said they were flying it out of Wharton, actually. So it's already on the west coast of the UK. So they let the sun set. They flew the typhoon, obviously quicker than the rotation of the Earth. So they watched the sun rise again as they were flying towards it. And obviously, this is the reason you get jet lag going across the Atlantic and things like that, because daylight times are just messed up because you're playing with the sun essentially. But the thing that was really funny about the interview was they said that when they were doing this, they didn't notify the Irish that they were going to fly their Typhoon very fast towards their airspace or something like this. So, but I think the way Brian Cox put it was that the RAF pilots said, "Oh, it's okay because all they're going to do is crap themselves and launch their Cessna." So obviously that made me laugh quite a bit, but.
Sorry, we got rid of the Cessnas. They've been replaced by Pilatus PC-12s now.
Well, actually, what made me really laugh was I looked up Irish military capability recently, and obviously they've got quite some high-tech aircraft and things like that. But what made me laugh was actually they do have Cessnas, as a part of training aircraft, and I thought it was a joke, but they actually have them. But no, it's brilliant. That was just a little spoof of a TikTok video I made, but obviously it seems to hit quite well with people. So.
Yeah, I came across it, and I was meant to say it to you the other night, actually, but it slipped my mind. So, Tom, that brings me on to the next thing, because you've done something quite cool. You ran a Lancaster simulator. How in the name of God did you get into that?
I nearly forgot we were going to talk about that. So, coming towards the end of university, I was looking for a job. I had a job for about a year as not as an estate agent, but I was kind of like an assistant estate agent, because the agency who took me on were brilliant. They were a local agency in Brighton called Maslin Estate Agents. Obviously, if you're looking for a house, go buy with them. But I don't know how many people are in Brighton listening to this. But and how many people are looking for a house. But no, I used to work for them. But they were brilliant because they took me on. They weren't looking for anyone, but I went round handing my CV in because I'd spent a few years previously as a bartender. And I'd done that for quite a few years and had a great laugh doing it in Manchester. Then I moved down to Brighton, worked for quite a while as a bartender at the Hilton in Brighton. but then, I left that job and essentially wanted to do something different. And because I was at university, having the most fun you have in your life, I still wanted something a little bit that, that could add to the CV. I've only ever done stuff that look good on your CV,
Yeah.
So I went searching for something that required you to be in a suit, every day and sort of thing. And so I just put in my CVs around all the agencies around Brighton, just, because it was just something different. It's not everyone's preferred part-time job, but it was just different for me. So I handed all the CVs in. They took me on really well because they weren't looking for anyone, but they said, you can work for us at weekend if you want. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And essentially, you earned their trust by doing loads of boring paperwork type stuff, signing ID documents and all that sort of stuff. But then, took people around on tours of houses and stuff at the weekend, which was actually great because it'll always be on my CV for the amount of time that I spent with different people.
Yeah.
Because especially being a uni student, all you're ever doing is you're partying and you're having fun with people your own age. So
Yeah.
the experience I got mixing with a huge range of people, pensioners right the way down to really young couples looking for their first house, So the skills you get learning to talking and building a rapport in a very short space of time with people of loads of different backgrounds and age ranges was brilliant. But I eventually left that job after, I think, a year of doing that. And I went to Shoreham Airport, which was only about half an hour away from where my accommodation was in Brighton. And again, just handed my CVs into every school that was there. Even if they weren't looking for anyone, I still went in the door and said, can I speak to whoever's in charge or whatever? So I did that, and I did it at Perrier at Shoreham. And I didn't know much about what they did, but I knew they were a flying school. I was just basically saying, if you want someone to clean the planes, tow them around or do paperwork, then I'm looking for a job like that. So after speaking to them, really sort of putting across my enthusiasm for aviation.
Yeah.
Because especially doing uni work, full time, working as a part-time estate agent at the weekends and stuff. I just really wanted that, even though I was flying for fun every now and then with flight sport, I just really wanted that time, back, spending time at the airport, and when you're doing stuff like that, it doesn't feel like work at all. So they were brilliant enough to take me on, because what he said to me was, I haven't got a job for you at all. We're not looking to take anyone on. And quite naturally, flying schools, with not a huge operation, you have to be careful about their money because they're operating aircraft. They're operating on very slim on profit margins and things like that. So, he was like, we can't take you on because we're not looking for anyone. But he said, and he pointed through the window into the hangar. He said, if you look in that back corner there, we've got a Lancaster Bomber flight simulator that's essentially just collecting cobwebs. And he said, if you want to get that up and running, that can be your job. So I, looking for a new job, I was definitely like, well, why not? I was the president of the Aeronautical Society at university, so we did a lot of it was brilliant. My university had quite a few simulators.
Oh, brilliant.
So I had quite a bit of experience doing that. Obviously, hours upon hours of my own simulator time, playing on flight simulators. So I was like, yeah, definitely love to do it. And given, the average age of the instructors at the school as well, none of them were either knew about, how to get into making a simulator work, but also they probably just didn't have the interest either. So they took me on. And it was brilliant because summer had just hit. So there was absolutely no uni to do at all. So I went every single day. And the best bit of it was, apart from any time I needed to spend money to make it better, he just left me to it. Yeah. So I just went, I looked at it. I genuinely just ripped it all apart, remembering where everything was plugged in. Because I wanted it to work when I plugged it all back in again. But no, I ripped it all apart. we moved it. My dad actually came down from Manchester because my dad's a builder, like a joiner. So he came down for free and built a room around the simulator.
Oh, wow.
We painted the floors, and the whole point of it was to make it an experience. And as far as we're aware to this day, it's the only Lancaster bomber simulator in the UK and quite possibly the world. You know, someone might have it tucked away in the back garden somewhere, but that we know of, that's available to the public. It was the only one. So we got it up and running. And what it was some guy, I can't remember his name now, but some chap who during World War II, you know, used to watch these things fly over his house, and he kind of made it a passion project of his. So he built just like a full-size replica of a Lancaster cockpit.
Wow.
with him and his mates. And there actually was a few original parts in there from real Lancasters. So like
wow.
the yoke as well was a proper Lancaster yoke and things like that. So him being a keen carpenter, or you know, like joiner himself, did all of the really fine detailed work, like making, you know, the housing for all the instruments and things like that. And his mate, really into software type stuff, actually integrated all the physical stuff into the electrical signals required to make the simulator work.
Wow.
And then they wrapped it around with they wrapped it around with 3 TV screens.
Wow.
Wired it all up to Microsoft Flight Sim at the time, because that was like the best simulator at the time, and made it work. And honestly, it's such a good simulator. And the amount I loved it because I learned something as well. I learned about how these things worked, you know, because not only was I making the simulator work, I'm making it into like an experience that we could sell to people. But for me to be the sort of, obviously I'm not a qualified flying instructor, but for me to be the person who ran the simulator and shown people how to fly it when they came and had a go, I made it my own project to learn as much as I could about them myself, you know. It's just incredible the things you learn. Like, I had no idea that Lancaster bombers only had 1 pilot.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Exactly. You'd think that an aircraft of that size had 2 pilots, but they had 1 pilot in the left-hand seat, and the guy who sat to the right of him was the flight engineer, who essentially would have kind of acted like a co-pilot anyway. But he didn't. They only had 1 set of controls for the pilot.
Wow.
And just things like that, because where the engineer sat right next, sort of in the co-pilot's position, down by his feet was the hole where the bomb aimer climbed down into his area of the aircraft. And, you know, it's just incredible. So you just learn all of these things. And then so we got that all operational. You know, we spent a bit of money, you know, painting it up, making the room around it. We found some amazing bits of memorabilia and just sort of collectible type stuff in the back of the simulator, just with cobwebs in the box that they just left there. You know, like a chain of like spent bullets and just things like that. So we found all that, and we found like not original, but you know, sort of like pilots' hand notes on how the systems operate and things like that. So we found all of that. Then we put it all on the Perrier website, and it's still on there to this day. And I think you'll still see my ugly mug smiling on there in the pictures. But yeah, so we put it on the website. You know, we offer the experience out to people. We designed sort of 3 packages. I'm not sure if they still run it this way now, but we put together 3 packages. One of them, I think package A, we called it, was like a half-hour go on the simulator. You just basically fly the thing. And then the challenge was to fly it under the what's it called now? I think the Humber Bridge or something like that. You know, just for fun, you know, because a lot of people who come along who do it, you know, they're interested in Lancasters, but they have next to no flying experience at all. So, you know, they have fun flying it. You know, we actually had an original set of headsets as well.
Oh, wow.
So we put them on with the oxygen mask. You know, they were all wired up so we could hear each other and everything. So it was a proper immersive experience. So, you know, and then you just have to go flying it, and you test your skills by seeing if you can get it under this bridge at the end, sort of thing.
Sounds like nearly a Dam Busters run.
Well, so then this is the way they worked it, because we worked a lot with like online experience package sellers and things like that. But the package C was exactly the same as package A, but with another half hour added on the end of it, where you then go and fly over all the exact same dams in Germany.
Wow.
And then land back. So, just from a local airfield, because flying from Yorkshire to the dams in Germany would have took hours. But so you can do that. And then package B, sort of in the middle, they did it by the amount of time per package. But we offered that as it's only available to previous simulator customers or qualified pilots. And what it is to fly the Mach Loop in Wales on the Lancaster simulator. Yeah, so
just quickly, for those of my listeners that don't know what the Mach Loop is, it's where the RAF, Navy, Army Air Corps, it is their place where you could be stood on top of a valley wall and have them fly under you in fast jets, helis, everything.
Yeah. So it's essentially the well, obviously now a lot of it's fast jet and helicopters and stuff, but the whole point of it is low level training for the military to essentially learn how to fly under the radar, but without hitting mountains. So, it's what they use, but like I say, it's only offered for people who've flown the sim before or qualified pilots, because it's really demanding to do it, because it's big. The controls are really sluggish, and it's fast as well. So you really have to be on the ball with flying it. So, I'd show people how to fly around the Mach Loop, and then it's down to them to actually get it around, if you know what I mean. Because it actually took me quite a long time to actually figure out where the Mach Loop is, how they go around it, where the entry and exit points are and things like that. Because, unless you're really trying to fly it, you can't, it's not easy to find out how to do it, sort of thing. So I watched a lot of videos online, watched a lot of, aviation enthusiast maps that people, you find on Google and things like that people overlay the route on maps and stuff. So after looking up all that, we then offered that package to people. I don't think many people did it just because of, it's only available to those people, not because we're trying to be picky. It's just because if you were to do it and you had no flying experience, you'd just stuff it into the mountain and you wouldn't have very much fun, so but that was one thing we did as well. So the really cool thing was that I was there for long enough that, again, the other cool thing about the flying school was that it wasn't just a flying school. They operate vintage biplanes from this flying school at Shoreham. So they operate a Tiger Moth. They have 2 Stomps, which I didn't know what Stomps were, but they're essentially a little bit more of a modern Tiger Moth. And they had 2 PA-28s there, because they still do normal PPL training as well. And I can't forget the Cub as well. They had like an old vintage sort of Piper Cub there as well. So I'd be around them a lot of the time. I naturally did some office functions. So when staff were ill or anything, I'd be sorting out bookings, processing, sort of the operations side of things. And then, after the boss got to know me for a while and, we made the simulator a thing, when I wasn't doing simulator experiences, I was ground crewing all the vintage aircraft they had. And I was actually taught how to prop swing on all the aircraft.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think I'm going to put it on my Instagram sometime soon, because I came across an old video of me prop swinging a Tiger Moth. And, quite naturally, they don't just let anyone do it. You really have to know what you're doing, because I think, I don't know, across the world, there's at least one case a year of people having their hand chopped off because, the moment it fires, it goes almost instantly to, its idle speed.
Yeah.
So it's, and then you've got that in your face. And obviously, because it's a prop, it's sucking air into it. So you've kind of got to move away from it as you flick it around. And, people who do it for the first time almost run away from it as you flick it around, But again, I just got to understand what a tiger moth is and how it works. And you actually get to know the engine by hand swinging it, because there was times when we'd swing it and you just knew it wasn't going to fire, but you just knew it. Like, for some really weird, it was live, it was ready to go, but you just knew it wouldn't fire. And that's just by spending time out front, the prop swinging it. And then you just knew that this time it was going to fire. And then when you did it, it fired. It's just really weird. But no, that was awesome, because I spent most of my summer and almost full time as well, actually, at this flying school doing this stuff. And then the only reason I left was because I was leaving university and coming up to start rotary training.
Wow. And did you, going back just to the Lancaster sim, did you have anyone who'd actually flown Lancasters to give feedback of how real?
Oh yeah, no, this is what I forgot to mention to you. So we never had any pilots come and visit, but we had this one chap who was an ex-Lancaster bomb aimer.
Wow.
And again, he was quite old. Obviously that sounds bad, but I mean, so he was he was quite old, so there's not a lot of them around, and obviously a lot went on in the war. It wasn't just Lancasters, so to have original Lancaster crew come and visit our simulator was absolutely fantastic. And so he came, he sat in the cockpit, he had a go at flying it and stuff, and he was genuinely impressed and blown away by how realistic well, not fully realistic, but just the sort of layout of the cockpit. It was it's a 1-to-1 scale. It had all the original sort of the positions of all the switches and gauges and stuff. The gauges were digital, because they had like a screen behind them to project the displays on. But no, he was really impressed by it. And then we also had a guy locally whose father was the Lancaster pilot.
Wow.
And he actually brought along with him original pictures of his dad, like squadron pictures. So they're all sat in front of the aircraft and stuff. And he donated all of these pictures and memorabilia to us for the simulator. And I think, obviously, I've not been there for about a year now, but I presume they're still all up on the wall because he was a local guy as well in Durham. So, it's a simulator in Durham. So we wanted to sort of commemorate a guy who flew them locally, so
that's cool.
They were all up on the wall.
That's very, very cool. That's wow. To even get something like that in World War II wise, because I think someone's advertising a Spitfire sim. But
I actually something that blew me away recently was again, because it's sort of lockdown at the moment. I'm trying to get back fit again, but I don't know anyone who loves it, but I absolutely hate running.
I'm the same,
yeah. So I got my bike working recently, and obviously the thing with a bike means you can go a lot further than you can whilst you're running. So because of lockdown and because of COVID and things like that, I've not actually been into Leicester City Centre that often. So the last few days I've been going on bike rides and I've just been riding around the streets, getting to know the layout and things like that. And again, the only thing, doing this meant I actually came across a shop front. And what caught my eye was I seen like a mannequin dressed in full like RAF uniform.
Right.
And so I just rode up to the shop front. I thought it was some sort of like promotional gimmick or something. But then I read the shop sign and it said Leicester Simulators or something.
All right.
And it looks like they've got car racing simulators in there, but they've also got a Spitfire simulator in there as well.
Oh, wow.
So again, I think that'd be a good weekend job for me. But
definitely.
I'm just... Well, with air cadets and full-time training and everything, I don't think I could justify it. But, again, I had no idea they existed until I rode past their shop front. So there is a good few Spitfire simulators around the country because obviously it's the Spitfire. But, as far as we're aware, that was the only Lancaster simulator in the country. And as far as I'm aware, it's still available. So you can go to the Perrier website and have a look and see what you fancy, basically.
Brilliant. I might have to cast an eye at that just to see what the story is, because that would be a cool day out.
Oh, what why not? And I'm definitely going back at some point. I made some friends there, that I made a few friends whilst I was working there, similar age to me as well. So, and they still work there as well. So I definitely said, I'm going to go back. I've got to land back at Shurham Airfield in the helicopter, because it's kind of like full circle sort of thing,
Yeah.
But no, I'll go back at some point. And I just loved it there. One of the best bits was at the height of summer, out on the grass sunbathing, whilst the aircraft are out flying, with nothing to do, and then you'd have Apaches from the Army Air Corps just taxiing past you, and just really weird things like that. And again, just the best summer job I've ever had. So.
Yeah, let's go back to like Microlight things and saying like sitting there sunbathing out in the grass. I remember one evening that really stuck with me was, I think it was about July or August, and it was a time where it was hitting 35 degrees every day, and it was hot. And I went for a spin to C40. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. It was 30 degrees in the ground. It got a little bit cooler at 1,500 feet. It was only 29. And then I remember we'd finished flying. One of the lads was testing out a Jabiru, and we were having a bit of crack. And he came into land watching the sunset. He came into land watching the sunset. And we all just kind of sat there having a Fanta and a Coke, and just like sat in the heat, all just talking some really, really good stuff, and what mates do,
It just hits you, doesn't it? It's like you don't realize whilst you're doing it, like you're just chatting to your mates, having like you say, having a can of Coke, planes landing next to you, and then it just hits you. It's like this is why you fly, isn't it? You're just doing things like this, and again, it brings it back to that whole microlight world, the community aspects of it, because you have meetups and things like that, but like I say, when it comes to commercial aviation, as fun and as amazing as it is as a career, you can't beat, spending time during the summer having a barbecue at the airfield, with planes landing all around you whilst you're chatting aviation to your mates, and just talking about those near misses with private jets you've had, and it's just. So yeah, no, it's incredible, and I'll definitely get back to doing it at some point soon.
Brilliant. It'd be good to see you back. So if anyone out there is aged between 15 and the age of 20 and does have an interest in microlights and fancies doing it, get yourself over to the British Microlight Aircraft Association's website and get that bursary filled in. And hopefully myself and Tom will see you in the sky very, very soon. Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. Have you got anything else you want to say about the bursary?
No. Well, so, the bursary, just go for it. You've got absolutely nothing to lose by signing up for it at all. Because at most, you just won't be successful, but it doesn't take you much to fill in the form and see where it goes. And I genuinely didn't think I was going to get accepted for it at all, and then the email came through and I was overjoyed when it came through. So, do it. And it's open to everyone, so it's open to girls as well. It's, as male dominated as aviation is, if, I think if you've got that genuine passion for aviation, you should go for it and follow it, because, you should follow your dreams. And then if you're essentially doing a job in the future that you love doing, you'll never work a day of your life. So that's what I've always been following my life. So, and I'm hopefully making it a reality now. So yeah, no, honestly, it's been incredible. The first ever podcast as well.
I feel proud of that.
I feel pleasured to be asked onto a podcast. So no, of course, it's brilliant. And, definitely go check out all of Mikey's social media as well. So.
And like we said, if you want to check out Tom's stuff, it's the Micropilot on YouTube, and follow also Tom on Instagram. He's, like you said, he's got some really, really cool stuff on there, and I quite enjoy sitting down and having a look at your stuff, Tom. So thank you. Thanks a million for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you very much.
Have a good one.